At the end of last summer, we saw Hyundai and General Motors, two unlikely friends, to team up. Check this out. We saw them sign an MOU exploring collaboration of vehicles, joint production of development, manufacturing, clean energy technology, etc. Now we're getting reports of the fruits of this collaboration about 6 months later. Guys, grab your snacks and drinks, buckle in. If you think Hyundai and General Motors teaming up is a good thing, let me know down below. Hit the like button if you are excited for today's news. If you guys are new to the channel, my name's Kirk. I talk about car news every single day, essentially. Even on the weekends, I find something to talk about. So if you guys like car news, I typically make car video in the morning, and then I also supplement in the afternoon sometimes with car reviews. So this week, for example, I got a Lexus LX Hybrid, which is brand new. They just started with that powertrain finally on the LX. And I got a Trail Boss Silverado as well that I'm reviewing. So a little GM action for you guys this week to complement this news piece. So here's the headline. They're sharing pickups and electric vans in North America. Here's the trade deal. Hyundai is saying, hey, we're going to give you two different types of commercial electric vans, and in return, you're going to give us your trucks. Hyundai getting trucks from GM, GM getting vans from Hyundai. Pretty simple trade-off there. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of their partnership. The documents reviewed by Reuters show Hyundai is considering deals with GM that include joint purchasing or development involving computing chips. All right, well, what do we just see about computing chips with GM lately? Just 3 days ago, we're at the NVIDIA press room. General Motors and NVIDIA are collaborating for AI on next-gen vehicle experience and manufacturing. So don't be surprised if NVIDIA gets involved with Hyundai in addition to GM here. But they're also working on next-gen batteries together. Here's the thing, this partnership makes sense more so than at least on surface level. Ultium, General Motors EV platform and EV batteries, even though I think they're kind of getting away from that naming. That's done with LG Chem. LG is a Korean company. Hyundai, also a Korean company. Hyundai also uses LG batteries. It's not their only source of batteries, but maybe the three of them can find ways to make better batteries, cheaper batteries, more energy dense batteries, etc. GM and Hyundai are facing rising competition from Chinese EV makers and the threat of a global trade war. Now, this is just going to be a more continuous thing throughout the industry. All right. And it's because, yes, China is leading the charge, but even before the tariffs, cars are just too expensive, too costly. Parts are too expensive. We have to have a boiling down of the most important components, the most common parts, and they need to be shared in as many vehicles as possible to reduce costs. And the only way that happens is if these manufacturers are working together. People have been saying for years, and even CEOs of car companies have been saying for decades now, that it's only a matter of time before they're just a few car brands. All right, because even at the surface, there might be lots of car brands underneath. And it's been like this, but it's going to be more like this. You can say like, well, Ford and GM and Hyundai and all these, they have multiple brands. That's true, Stellantis. But we're going to get to a point where all these parts are going to be shared between manufacturers. So the differences are going to be less and less as time goes on between car brands. We're seeing that with Toyota and Subaru, for example. Mazda's trying to hold on as long as possible to be as unique as possible. And then you see in China, all these brands, well, a lot of them are disappearing because the competition's so stiff, but all these brands share motors, they share components. That's going to be happening in America due to necessity to survive, I'm pretty sure. Some will say, maybe half the car brands will be left in 15 years compared to what we have now. That's a possibility. But even let's say most of the car brands survive in the next decade or two, they might just be rebadges of other manufacturers, right? All the components are going to be pretty much commonplace going forward. So Hyundai is going to produce vans to be sold under both its own and GM brands. There's no Kia mention here, but you got to think Hyundai and Kia already share components, they share platforms, all right? So Kia, just because they're not working with GM doesn't mean they're not going to have what Hyundai and GM are going to be cooking up together. All right, so don't think Kia is completely out of the situation, as they are a sister company to Hyundai. All right, but initially importing these vans is going to be from the Ulsan plant in South Korea. Hyundai is considering manufacturing the vans in North America by 2028. I mean, tariffs might affect that. Their source said Hyundai is exploring building a new plant, adding production to an existing facility, or contracting out the manufacturing. Who would they contract? Well, we just saw yesterday's news that Mitsubishi's essentially, it's not a done deal, but Mitsubishi said to be contracting Foxconn to build EVs for them. The talks on pickups focus on GM sharing its midsize truck. So this is the Colorado and Canyon in the United States. So Hyundai would rebadge the Colorado and Canyon. Now, this kind of sounds familiar. Remember the Nissan Honda talks that are currently off the table. Honda wanted access to Nissan's pickup trucks, especially the Frontier, right? You know, Honda would have a rebadging of the Frontier. Well, now Hyundai is surely going to have a rebadging of the Colorado and the Canyon. Let me know what you guys think about that. That is fascinating. Hyundai also wants to sell a version of GM's popular full-size truck, like the Silverado that I'm driving this week. But GM hasn't put that option on the table. GM is good. That is dangerous. So here's the thing. The Colorado and the Canyon, they don't print money for Chevy. They probably do well enough, but they probably sell a lot to fleet. I mean, I know Chevy already sells a lot of full-size trucks to fleet, but the Colorado and Canyon don't have the same market presence as the Tacoma, for example. And so they're looking for ways to spread their mid-size truck game, and Hyundai can be a part of that. But GM has no problem selling large pickup trucks. And so I don't know if they're going to dangle this out. It almost, here, what would Hyundai have that GM doesn't? Well, they have quite a few things. Would Hyundai be saying, hey, you can use our 800 volt eGMP platform, we'll give you all the, or you can rebadge those vehicles. Maybe we contract manufacture. I don't think that's going to be the case. GM has put too much money to their own architecture, which is not as good as the eGMP 800 volt setup. I mean, hybrids, that's the thing that comes to the mind outside of EVs, which GM seems to think they know everything about at this point. Hybrids. GM needs hybrids. They don't have any, and the market is not calling for EVs. The market can only take so many pickup trucks. But if they had an EV version of the Traverse that I just drove recently, or even their smaller vehicles, it would benefit them massively. So I think that would be the only situation where GM coughs up their large pickup truck to be rebanded by Hyundai is if they get access to Hyundai's hybrids and even their upcoming EREV or extended range electric vehicle plug-in hybrid technology. They're also discussing the possibility of Hyundai providing GM with compact SUVs in Brazil. Now, both GM and Hyundai have not given any concrete news. So this is coming from reliable sources still that Reuters got their hands on. I have no reason to doubt this information. We know GM is getting their ass handed to them in China, as well as most outside automakers. Hyundai's business in China is very minimal. They're not affected by the cutthroat market there, like the Japanese companies are, like the American companies, like the German companies. Those companies are all diminishing. Hyundai never had a big footprint there, or nearly as big of a footprint there. But what Hyundai is worried about is the threat of these Chinese cars being exported. Now, they don't have to worry about that here in the United States, but in many, many other markets, it is like Southeast Asia, Europe, where GM is not a part of Europe, but Hyundai is, and Hyundai needs to find ways to reduce costs to have a better shot in Europe and Southeast Asia as well. And so if they can get R&D dollars and split R&D with GM, it's going to fare well for GM in China, and Hyundai will take advantage outside of China, where China exports their very, very low-cost EVs. GM's going to phase out their really old Chevy Express and GMC Savannah vans, so they need new commercial vans. Hyundai is considering sharing its compact electric commercial vans based on the ST1 electrical commercial vehicle. It would also give GM a larger commercial van that Hyundai is developing to challenge the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. The automakers might even share sales and service networks for the van. The smaller van would initially be made at the Ulsan plant in South Korea for Hyundai and potentially be supplied to GM starting mid-2027. The model will be followed in 2028 by the larger van, similar in size to Hyundai's Solati. Well, let's look up a Solati. Okay, well, it looks like a big Mercedes Sprinter van, if you ask me. I mean, a van like this would sell really well in America. People are living out of their vehicles. But if it's fully electric, that reduces the ability to live out of them. But that's not, people aren't building these vehicles to live out of. Honestly, I'd be interested in something like this because I have so many kids, and minivan is, well, my gosh, look at that. That looks like a bus and you can walk through it. I don't have that many kids, but man, that would be extremely practical to move the kids around into. Look at all the vents up top. So this would be a welcome addition from Hyundai here in the United States, regardless of it's a GM badged or not. But remember, just because GM would badge these doesn't mean Hyundai wouldn't have their own counterparts as well. New North American commercial van factory under consideration with target production of 60,000 by 2030 and more than 100,000 in 2032. I bet if Trump gets a sniff that Hyundai and GM are considering building a plant, I wouldn't be surprised if it gives them tax breaks, whatever he needs to do to get this plant built in North America or specifically in the United States. Small SUVs and pickups. So Hyundai is going to use GM's inroads into commercial vehicles here. Hyundai has no presence, as far as I'm aware, for commercial vans or anything of the such here in North America. So they're going to use GM's partnership here to gain foothold in those segments. Toyota has never succeeded there. Nissan made those vans for years, one based off of the Titan, right? The NV2000, for example, if 2500, if 3,000. You guys, you will. I mean, they're the most ugly minivans. They're not a true minivan because they have a front end that has a huge V8 like a truck. It's based off the Titan, right? Anyways, no one's been able to really compete with the Detroit 3 automakers from an outside company. Also in this trade, GM could get the small sport utility vehicle called the Creta. That's in Brazil. Darn. You guys want to know what the Creta is? The Creta is very closely related to the Seltos, for example. And you could even say the Kona. All right. The Kona for Southeast Asia. The Kona, it might be just a North American product only at this point. You guys will fact check that for me. I will see you guys in the comments. Stay tuned for more car news coming down the hatch. There's always something new and exciting, from new models to new collaborations, and I'm excited to bring it to you guys on the channel. See you in the comments. Chat it up. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. Peace.